Do you think that the characteristics and genes that like a dog are born with, like their nature, or like the way they're like brought up and treated, like their nurture is like more effective in determining their personality?
I think it's a little bit of both. So we definitely know that how dogs are raised makes a huge difference. And if they're trained to do certain things, like fight, then they will be more inclined to do that. There are some dogs who definitely have an aggressive nature, be it from anxiety-based or maybe territorial aggression, and you can definitely train those dogs to respond differently when given certain scenarios. What I think is really interesting when it comes to pit bulls is we know those dogs, they're not aggressive dogs by nature, but what's happened is when you've got these fighting groups and they're breeding their own dogs for fighting, they're selecting the most aggressive dogs and then breeding those with the next most aggressive dogs. So in that sense, they are selecting for aggression. So then you do end up with pit bulls that are rescued from fighting rings, who are bred for aggression, have those genes that are more dominant, and then they tend to be the dogs that cause problems. Is my personal feeling.
Okay.
So to some degree, it's a little bit of both.
Okay. Do you think that the prejudice that like people and companies have and like the fear that people have of them is reasonable for?
I don't. I feel like there are two things that happen here. Part of it is responsible pet owners have to be responsible. They need to. I have a boxer.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm not going to let her off the leash at a dog park because she makes people nervous. So I think people that have quote unquote the aggressive breeds need to be the best dog owners they possibly can, and then thereby set a good example. But no, I don't think it's necessarily fair. I've been bitten way more by chihuahuas and toy poodles than I've never been bitten by a pit bull. So I think the problem is the severity of the bite is worse, and it has nothing to do with their jaw walking down. Their jaw is the same as any other dog, but it's a big dog, and it's a strong dog. So they are gonna cause more damage when they bite as opposed to like a little toy poodle who maybe has only half the number of teeth that it originally did because they're prone to dental disease.
Yeah.
So I think the destruction is more, and that obviously is the problem. No one's gonna die from a toy poodle attack, hopefully. That'll be odd.
Yeah. Do you think that, what do you think is the best way for people to be educated on pit bulls?
It's hard because people, I think, have preconceived notions, and or they have maybe a bad experience. I think until they get a chance to meet these dogs, it's very, very difficult to dissuade them. So I do think, responsible ownership is a big key. So the problem too is a lot of people who are afraid of pit bulls don't necessarily have dogs, so they're not going to be in a scenario where they're going to be exposed to dogs. But I think people are very into therapy dogs right now. So the more pit bulls we can get as therapy dogs and just show how gentle they are and how kind and loving they are, in sort of that kind of scenario, I think would be really helpful. Always public interest stories are great. So I remember like the cat that chased the dog off, like one boy that went super viral on YouTube. So I think again, good examples of positive pit bull stories I think are great, and I think those go a long way.
Okay.
The internet's amazing for that.
Okay, and my last one. Sorry, they're kind of in a funny order. Do you think that these dogs that are rescued from situations where they've been bred and trained to be aggressive can be retrained and brought into people's homes?
I think we know they can.
Okay.
So I think there was a story about the Michael Vick dogs that I think all but one were able to be rehomed, and they've shown all these like great stories. I think that's where you really need a really savvy people running these rescues. You need to place the right people in the right house. So, and they're terriers, so that's part of it too. They're terriers, so they're going to go on and do things like maybe chase cats because that's in their nature. Terriers go after vermin, and they see a cat as vermin. You get the same problem with Westies and Airedales and things like that. So I think you have to place the dog in the right home, do a lot of screening, really do a lot of behavioral evaluation, so that you don't end up with maybe that dog who has been selected genetically and bred through fighting rings to be extra aggressive and extra reactionary. That might not be a good dog to rehome. But maybe the other dogs who weren't part of the breeding program, or maybe who were being brought up, or dogs who were the bait dogs, who don't tend to have that real reactionary personality, they may be great dogs to rehome. And that's not saying that the real fighting dogs wouldn't be, you just need the right scenario. And I think where sometimes rescues are so determined to home these dogs that they don't necessarily, so I had a scenario where I was trying to adopt a pit bull and I was told she was good with cats. And then she was in a house with cats, and I brought her home, and she proceeded to chase my poor geriatric cat up and down the house for hours. The poor cat was terrified. She actually broke through a dog gate that I had set up so the cat could get away. She actually broke the gate. And I called and I said, what's going on? I was told this dog was good with cats. And they said, oh yeah, she's in a home with cats, but they weren't allowed to be together. And that's where you need that good history, that good responsible rescue, to make sure the pets get in the right home. Because then you end up with horror stories. So I think that's the key, is good evaluation, responsible rescues where they're honest and say, yeah, here are the problems with this dog. I wouldn't recommend him with other dogs, or I wouldn't recommend it with cats or with children, or this dog checked out fine. And we did all these plethora of testing and did great. So you just have to have that strong foundation, and then responsible adopting. And I think they can do really well. We have tons of rescue pit bulls in the practice, and the vast majority are fantastic. And the ones who are aggressive, or who we would label as cautions, they're not so much aggressive as they're anxious. So some dogs, it's that fight or flight thing. Some dogs retreat and try to back away. Others say, hey, the best defense is a good offense. I'm going to try to scare this person away so then I'm not scared. And that's what probably 90% of these cases are, is they're dogs who are scared and anxious and don't know how to respond. And so they respond wrong, but they respond by trying to put on a tough exterior to try and get whoever's coming at them to back down. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Thank you.